I never imagined I'd watch a grown woman tear down Maplewood Drive at full speed, arms pinwheeling, screaming like an air raid siren, while a cloud of bees pursued her through the morning sunlight. But that's exactly what I saw last Tuesday. And the thing is, she deserved every single sting. People around here love to say karma takes its time. I don't buy that. Sometimes karma doesn't stroll in. Sometimes it shows up humming. A few weeks earlier, this neighborhood was my quiet little corner of the world. Green lawns, calm evenings, and the steady, comforting buzz from my hives out back. Then she moved in Karen Whitfield, the self-appointed ruler of the HOA. The kind of woman who acted like she owned the sidewalks. And apparently everyone's mail, too. It started as little things. A warning here, a safety concern there. But when my packages began disappearing, I knew it wasn't random porch pirates. It was Karen. And that's when I decided. If she wanted to steal from me, she should meet the real workers behind my honey. Before we get into it, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, because this one's about to sting. Before the shouting, before the HOA meetings that felt like courtroom hearings, Maplewood Grove was honestly perfect. I bought my house 5 years ago after taking early retirement from the paramedic service. 2 decades on an ambulance teaches you a couple things fast. Life can flip in an instant, and peace is worth protecting. I wanted quiet. I wanted a place where the loudest sound was a distant mower or the soft buzz of my bee boxes near the back fence. I started beekeeping after my doctor told me to find a calming hobby. Turns out, bees are better teachers than most people. They don't gossip. They don't posture. They don't start neighborhood feuds. They work. Steady, organized, loyal to their hive. Some evenings I'd sit in a folding chair and just watch them come and go. The way their tiny society ran with more discipline than any HOA board I'd ever encountered. My wife Diane loved the honey and hated my suit. She said I looked like a marshmallow astronaut in that white getup. Still, she supported me. Every Sunday morning I'd bring her fresh honeycomb for toast, and she'd pretend she wasn't impressed, rolling her eyes while smiling into her tea. The neighborhood matched the vibe. Neat 2-story homes, identical mailboxes, hedges trimmed like they'd been measured with rulers. People waved. People smiled. People stayed in their lanes. Until Karen Whitfield arrived. She moved into the cul-de-sac in late spring, taking the old Parsons place on the corner. From day one, she acted like Maplewood Grove was her personal kingdom. She printed HOA guidelines before she'd fully unpacked. Within a week, she was knocking on doors with a clipboard, making notes like she'd been elected to something bigger than suburbia. The first time I met her, I was checking a hive. She walked right up my driveway without asking. Hands on hips, sunglasses big enough to shade a solar panel. "Excuse me," she said, already halfway into accusation. "Do you realize you're keeping dangerous insects this close to residential property?" I looked up through my mesh veil and kept my smile. "They're bees, ma'am. They're not a problem unless someone bothers them. They can sting someone," she snapped. "Especially children." "We don't have kids on this street, Karen," I said. Her mouth tightened. "That's Mrs. Whitfield. And I'll be bringing this up at the next HOA meeting." I shrugged. "Feel free. I'll bring honey." She glared like I'd insulted her bloodline, spun on her heel, and marched off. That was my first warning. And like any beekeeper knows, disturb a hive, and you shouldn't be surprised when it reacts. For a little while, nothing changed. I kept to my routine. Tend the bees, mow the lawn Saturdays, live quietly. I ordered things online all the time: tools, hive parts, jars, random garden gadgets. Less small talk, more efficiency. Our mail carrier, Tony, was solid. Friendly guy. Ex-Marine energy, big grin, dependable as sunrise. He'd leave packages on my porch behind a potted fern, and sometimes we'd chat about weather or sports. I trusted him. Then one Monday morning, Diane called from the doorway. "Honey, did you get that Amazon delivery yesterday?" "No," I said. "Didn't even see a notification." She frowned. "Tony told me he left it on the porch." We checked. The fern was there. No box. At first, I chalked it up to the usual, someone testing the neighborhood, maybe a one-off. Then it happened again. And again. Always small boxes. Nothing fancy. Always addressed to me. Never Diane's craft supplies. Never anyone else's stuff. Just mine. After the third one, I checked my security camera feed, only to find the camera unplugged. Not broken. Not damaged. Just cleanly pulled out like someone knew exactly what they were doing. That night, I mentioned it to my neighbor Paul. Quiet guy. Observant. The type who never starts drama but always knows where it's headed. Paul, I said, you notice anything weird around my porch lately? He hesitated, then flicked his eyes toward the Whitfield's place. You didn't hear this from me, Mike, he murmured. But I watched Karen pick up one of your boxes last week. She said she was taking it inside for safekeeping because it was unattended. I laughed, thinking he had to be kidding. She took my mail? Paul didn't laugh back. He just nodded, like he'd been waiting for me to catch up. I could have stormed over there and made a scene. But years on the job taught me something else too. Anger makes you sloppy. And I didn't need rage. I needed proof. The next day I stopped by the HOA office. A little white building beside the community pool. The secretary, Pam, was there. She'd been around forever, the kind of person who brings cookies to meetings and actually means well. I asked, casually, are there any official HOA rules about residents collecting other people's packages? Pam blinked. No, of course not. That's not HOA business. I smiled. Just checking. So Karen wasn't enforcing rules. She was inventing them, using the HOA label like a hall pass for whatever she felt like doing. That night, sitting in my garage watching bees drift through the fading light, I muttered, mostly to myself, you little workers understand community better than she ever will. Bees have a hierarchy, sure, but they don't abuse it. They don't steal from the hive next door. They respect boundaries. I told Diane what Paul said. She gave me that look. Half disbelief, half warning. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe, I said. Or maybe it's theft dressed up as concern. Over the next few days, I started noticing Karen's pattern. Every morning she walked her little white dog, Princess, past everyone's porches. Same route, same pace, eyes scanning like a patrol drone. When she passed my place, Princess always stopped at the corner where Tony left packages. And Karen would look around, bend down, pick up whatever was there, and act like she was checking the label. One day I caught her mid-grab while I was trimming the hedge. Need help carrying that, Karen? I called. She jerked like I'd fired a starter pistol, clutching the box to her chest. Oh, well, I was just making sure no one stole it. Good to know you're volunteering for porch patrol, I said, smiling. She didn't smile. She muttered something about community standards and hustled away. That night Diane watched me pour a drink and narrowed her eyes. You're smiling. Not your I forgive her smile. Your I'm plotting smile. I'm just thinking about bees, I said. She sighed like she already regretted asking. I don't want to know. She was right. Because if Karen wanted to keep stealing, she was about to learn what happens when you keep poking at the wrong hive. At first it was a slow drip, one missing box every couple weeks. Easy to blame on shipping errors. But by summer, 7 deliveries were gone. 7. All marked delivered. Amazon replaced them, sure, but that wasn't the point. It wasn't about $20 parts or a hive frame I could reorder. It was the nerve, the entitlement. Someone was taking my things right off my property and acting like they were doing the neighborhood a favor. So I reinstalled my camera, this time with a hidden backup power line run through the siding. At 10:42 a.m., Tony dropped off a package, tucked it behind the fern, and gave my doorbell cam a friendly wave. Normal. At 11:15, motion alert. Karen Whitfield appeared in a pink blazer, pearls, clipboard held like she was conducting an inspection for NASA. She checked both directions, bent down, lifted the package, and walked off like it belonged to her. No hesitation, no guilt, just routine. I watched the clip 3 times. Her smug little expression made my blood pressure climb, but I stayed calm. I wanted her comfortable, careless. That night I printed stills and slid them into a folder labeled Package Theft, Exhibit A. Then I sent her a polite text. Hi Karen. Saw you picked up one of my deliveries today. Appreciate the concern. Can you drop it back by my porch tomorrow? Her reply came fast. Hi Michael. I only took it for safekeeping. HOA has reports of suspicious activity. You can collect it after the next meeting. I nearly choked on my coffee. Suspicious activity. The only suspicious activity was her committing mail theft while clutching a clipboard. When I told Diane, she laughed so hard she almost spilled her wine. So now she's holding your packages hostage. Oh, she won't, I said. I'm not going to yell. I'm going to teach. The next HOA meeting was at the clubhouse. Always smelling like coffee, cheap perfume, and simmering resentment. Karen stood at the podium addressing a small group of retirees and bored parents. And I'd like to remind everyone, she said, voice dripping with superiority. Unattended packages can be considered community risks. I raised my hand. Question, Madam President. Are you authorized to remove mail from private property? Her eyes narrowed. This isn't about you, Mr. Turner. Oh, it's about everyone, I said pleasantly. Including the part where you keep taking boxes with my name on them. Murmurs rippled through the room. I was protecting the neighborhood, she said, tight smile trembling. Of course, I replied, because when I think public safety, I think someone hoarding my bee supplies and coffee filters in their garage. A few people chuckled. Karen went red. This discussion is over, she snapped. If you have complaints, file them in writing. I already did, I said, tapping my folder. With the county sheriff. Her face flickered. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, I said. I hadn't called the sheriff yet, but I wanted her to spend the next week wondering if every knock at her door was law enforcement. For a few days, she avoided me. No patrol walks. No notes. No pop-up violations. Then another package disappeared, this time a replacement part for my smoker box. That was it. I built a bait package using an old Amazon box. Inside, a small GPS tracker and a folded note in bold letters. Smile for the camera, Karen. Outside label, fragile, organic wax samples. At 9:30 a.m., Tony delivered it. I sat inside with the camera feed open. 10:15, Karen arrived right on schedule. Same blazer, same swagger. She looked around, grabbed the box, and walked off like she was doing me a favor. 5 minutes later, the tracker slid toward her driveway and stopped in her garage. I grabbed my keys, followed the signal, and pulled up as she watered flowers like she hadn't just stolen federal mail. Morning, Karen, I said. Morning, Michael. Funny thing, I said, holding up my phone. That package I'm missing seems to be sitting in your garage. She froze. Oh, well, that one. I was going to return it. I thought it was for me. I stared at her. Addressed to Michael Turner, 302 Maplewood. She stammered. There must have been a mix-up. Yeah, I said. The mix-up is you thinking you run the postal service. Behind her, through the garage gap, I saw them. My boxes stacked up, still sealed. You've been busy, I said. Her jaw tightened. I was safeguarding them. Sure, I said. And I'm the queen bee. That cracked her composure. I'll have you fined for harassment. The HOA will hear about this. Great, I said, walking away. Make sure they spell thief correctly in the minutes. By that evening, she'd called an emergency HOA meeting, accusing me of spying and using illegal trackers. The board, predictably, didn't want conflict. They mumbled about misunderstandings and cooling off. Translation: Karen could do anything she wanted as long as the neighborhood stayed quiet about it. That's when I realized rules don't stop bullies. Consequences do. Standing by my hives later, watching them move like disciplined little gold soldiers. Calm, efficient, ruthless only when threatened. An idea settled into place. No HOA can regulate nature. If Karen insisted on stepping onto my property, maybe she needed a lesson in boundaries the natural way. Diane caught the look on my face that night. You're planning something. Me? No, I said innocently. just admiring how smart bees are. Michael, she warned, don't do anything reckless. I won't, I said, pouring her a glass of wine. I'm just going to let nature do what it does. Then, on the porch, I glanced across at Karen's lit windows and whispered toward the hives behind me. All right, girls. Time to teach the HOA queen what real royalty looks like. By sunrise, the plan was humming in my head. I upgraded my camera setup again. Small, discreet, tucked where Karen wouldn't notice, aimed squarely at the porch. If she wanted to keep playing, I wanted everything in crisp detail. Then I prepared another bait box, labeled Fragile Premium Honeycomb Samples. Inside, a GPS tracker, a motion-trigger dye pack used for bait marking, and a note. This package contains property protected by law. Tampering may result in criminal charges, and possibly something worse. I placed it exactly where Tony always left deliveries. Karen, being Karen, stayed on schedule. At 9:55, I sat on the couch with coffee and the live feed open. 10:03, she appeared. Sunglasses, mug that red NO. One HOA queen, princess trotting beside her like a tiny accomplice. She slowed near my driveway, glanced around, and smiled when she spotted the box. She pretended to check her phone, then scooped it up with delicate little, "I'm doing you a favor" hands and walked away. 10 minutes later, I checked the tracker. Stopped, garage. I waited an hour, then strolled over. Karen was pruning roses like she hadn't just committed another theft. "Morning, Karen." "Mr. Turner," she said stiffly. "Did you happen to see a package on my porch earlier?" She put on a confused face. "A package? Oh, you mean that suspicious box? I secured it for the neighborhood." "Appreciate it," I said. "Mind if I grab it?" Her shears paused mid-snip. "It's inside. I was going to return it later." "I'll save you the trouble," I said, stepping forward before she could block me. "Wait," she started. But the garage door was open enough for me to see the stack of my missing boxes again. She lunged to cut me off. "You can't just walk onto my property." I smiled. "But you can walk onto mine?" Her eyes darted, searching for control. "You're harassing me." "Funny," I said, pulling my phone out, "because my video and this GPS tracker tell a different story." She went still, then hissed, "This is a misunderstanding." "Of course," I said, backing away. "By the way, check your hands." She glanced down. Yellow dye was already blooming across her palms. The look on her face was pure art. She gasped, dropped the shears, and bolted inside, slamming the door behind her. I went home, made fresh coffee, and smiled the whole time. That afternoon, Greg Sanders, HOA vice president, nervous man with a permanent sweat stain near his collar, called me. Mike, Karen filed a complaint," he said. "She claims you're stalking her." I laughed. "Greg, she's stolen my packages. Again. I have proof." Silence. "You have proof?" "I do." "Want it sent to the board or straight to the sheriff?" "Let's not escalate," he blurted. "I'll call a meeting tonight. We'll handle it quietly." Quietly. HOA code for protect the loudest person. I showed up anyway, calm as ever. The community center looked like a bargain courtroom. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, folding chairs. Karen was already seated like she was waiting for cameras. Greg started. "We're here to discuss recent disagreements." Karen cut in instantly. "He's been spying on me, setting traps, spreading lies. I was protecting the community." I held up a flash drive. "Here's footage of Karen taking a package off my porch and opening it in her garage." The room went dead quiet. Karen's mouth worked soundlessly. "That's edited." Greg leaned toward my tablet still. "That looks pretty real, Karen." From the back, Paul chuckled. "Yeah, same pink jacket." Karen shot him a glare sharp enough to slice glass. "I was protecting the neighborhood from dangerous materials." "Dangerous honeycomb," I said flatly. "A heroic sacrifice." Laughter started spreading, muffled at first, then less polite. Greg sighed. "Karen, we can't condone removing items from private property without consent. She crossed her arms. Then the HOA should create new rules about unattended packages. We'll discuss it, Greg muttered, clearly wishing he could vanish. The meeting ended without a formal ruling, but I didn't need one. The neighborhood had seen her. When Karen stormed out, heads followed her like she'd just tripped on her own crown. At home, Diane handed me tea. How'd it go? I think she's allergic to embarrassment, I said. Maybe she'll finally stop, Diane said. She'll stop, I replied. Not because she wants to, because she'll have no choice. That night, I checked my hives and murmured, "She's not done, is she?" The bees answered with a low, steady buzz, like a choir warming up. Next morning, an HOA notice was taped to my door, effective immediately. An O resident may keep insects, hives, or pollinating colonies within HOA grounds. I laughed so hard I almost fell off the porch. Karen had declared war. Too bad she missed one detail. I'd registered my hives with the county agricultural program 3 years earlier. HOA rules didn't outrank state law, so I drew my own line. That afternoon, I moved a smaller hive from the backyard to the front, set it a few feet from my mailbox. I told Diane it was for better sun. She gave me a look. Better sunlight. Educational, I said. She sighed. Just don't hurt anyone. Wouldn't dream of it, I said, because bees don't attack without reason. They respond to intrusion, vibration, trespass. All I had to do was stop protecting Karen from consequences. I made the setup look natural, planted bright lavender near the hive, pretty enough to look intentional. Then I ordered a few more deliveries to keep the bait fresh. When the next box arrived, I left it in plain view beside the hive. Label facing out. Organic royal honey. Fragile. The next morning I sat inside with the feed open. 10:07 a.m. Karen arrived with Princess. She paused halfway up the sidewalk, clearly weighing her options. Hive, bees, box, ego, ego 1. She marched onto my porch muttering about violations. The hive's buzz thickened, soft warning. She reached for the box, eyes flicking nervously. A bee landed on her sleeve. She froze, then waved her hand hard. Bad idea. What happened next was suburban poetry. Karen yelped, dropped the box, stumbled backward, and started swatting as bees circled her head. Princess barked and bolted into the street, leash dragging like a fuse. Karen shrieked, "Help! They're attacking me!" From my window, I sipped my coffee. "No, Karen," I muttered. "They're defending themselves." She hit the sidewalk running, screaming and flailing, as more bees joined the escort. Down the block she went. Pink blazer, pearls, chaos, while the whole scene unfolded like a cartoon she'd written herself into. Later that day, my phone buzzed. HOA alert. Emergency meeting tonight. Topic: bee safety. The clubhouse was packed. Everyone had heard about the bee attack. Karen arrived with her hand bandaged like she'd boxed a lawnmower, plus a dramatic scarf like she'd returned from battle. Greg cleared his throat. "Karen, you requested." She stood. "Fellow residents, I was viciously attacked by a swarm of aggressive bees kept illegally by Mr. Turner." I raised a hand. "They're pollinators, Greg, and they're legally registered. Want the paperwork?" Karen snapped. "Paperwork doesn't change that I was stung on community property. You were on my porch," I said, and played the video. Crystal clear. Karen trespassing, reaching for the box, panicking, then sprinting away shrieking. Someone snorted. Someone else coughed to hide laughter. Then the room cracked. Karen sputtered, "You can't record me without consent." Greg lifted a hand. "Karen, it's a front porch. That's legal. And thanks," I added, "for proving you were trespassing again." The laughter wasn't subtle now. Even Greg smiled before he could stop himself. Karen went scarlet. "This is harassment. I'll call the sheriff." "Already did," I said. "He confirmed it's legal. So are my bees. So is the footage." That ended the meeting. Karen stormed out, leaving her papers behind like shed skin. At home, Diane asked, "So, how many people laughed this time?" Enough, I said. But she's not finished. She wasn't. Over the next week, Karen flailed in every direction. Animal control came, confirmed the bees were domesticated, healthy, not a threat. She called the county, was told she should be grateful she wasn't charged with trespassing. Then she pushed out an HOA newsletter titled, "Danger in the Neighborhood. How Bees Threaten Our Children." Problem was, we didn't have kids on our street. Not one. The neighbors stopped taking her seriously. Paul told me, laughing. She tried to convince me your bees killed her begonias. I'll tell the bees to stop murdering flowers, I said. But Karen couldn't handle being doubted. The more people rolled their eyes, the more she unraveled. Around midnight one night, I saw her silhouette creeping near my driveway, phone flashlight flicking on and off. I stepped onto the porch. "Evening, Karen." She jumped. "I was just inspecting for safety hazards." "Middle of the night's a bold choice," I said. "Very official. I'll have you removed from this neighborhood," she hissed, backing away. I smiled. "Careful, Karen. Bees don't like loud noises." She retreated into the dark, muttering. Next morning, Tony delivered a small parcel and grinned. "Got a good one for you. Someone called the post office saying we should stop deliveries on your street because of bee attacks." I laughed. "Let me guess. Same voice that tried to ban porch furniture last month." Tony winked. "Bingo. That's when I knew." Karen wouldn't stop until she won or burned herself down, and I didn't need to push her. She was already doing it. Maplewood Grove started to feel like it was holding its breath. Same sprinklers, same dog walks, same coffee smells, but an undercurrent of tension. Everyone waited for Karen's next move. Monday morning, a white SUV crawled down the street with magnets on the doors. Maplewood HOA, authorized personnel. Karen stepped out with Greg and 2 board members who looked miserable. They gathered at my driveway, whispering. Karen pointed at my porch like she was marking a crime scene. Diane, sipping tea on the swing, muttered, "Oh, this'll be fun." Karen called out, "Mr. Turner, we're conducting an emergency safety inspection under HOA Section 27, Clause 6. I smiled. "Never heard of it." "It covers environmental hazards," she said sharply. "Aggressive insects near community walkways." "You mean my bees?" I said. "The ones that stung you after you trespassed?" Her jaw twitched. "The community voted your hives are a threat." I looked at Greg. "Did they vote, Greg?" Greg looked like a man trapped in a divorce hearing. "Not officially." "Thought so," I said. Karen shoved a violation notice forward. "Remove the hives within 72 hours or face daily fines." "Go ahead," I said, handing her my folder. State registration, agricultural license, county documentation. "Call the county if you'd like." Greg skimmed the first page and sighed out loud. The other board members exchanged a look, realizing Karen had dragged them into a losing fight. Karen's face pinched like she'd bitten something spicy. "You think you're clever. We'll see what animal control says," she snapped. "Perfect," I said. "They're welcome. The bees love visitors." That evening, animal control showed up in a county SUV. Tall officer, clipboard, calm demeanor. "Evening," he said. "Got a call about aggressive pollinators." I smiled. "That's us. Come look." I handed him the registration. He nodded. "Italian honeybees. Gentle breed. Clean hives. No swarm risk. Honestly, neighbors should be grateful." "I'll frame that," I said. He left 10 minutes later, promising a report stating everything was legal and safe. I figured that would end it. With Karen, nothing ends. It mutates. The next day, she hit every porch with flyers like a doomsday preacher. Warning: neighborhood infestation. Public health at risk. Aggressive bees threaten children and pets. Sign petition for removal. She'd even used a photo of hornets she found online. Paul showed me his copy, laughing so hard he nearly spilled coffee. "She thinks the bees are planning a coup. Tell her to wear armor," I said. By week's end, the petition had 3 signatures. Karen, her husband, and Greg, who later admitted she bullied him into signing. Some neighbors started hanging fake cardboard, bee boxes, in solidarity. It wasn't about bees anymore. It was about control. At the monthly open forum, Karen tried one last power play. She stood before 24 residents holding a jar of my honey like it was radioactive. "This," she announced, "is the product of illegal beekeeping that endangers our homes." Couldn't help it. Funny, because that same honey won first prize at the county fair last year. Chuckles. And, I added, half my sales go to the local school garden. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. From the back someone called, "We love that honey." Another voice followed, "Karen, maybe you're just allergic to accountability." The room burst into laughter. Karen slammed the jar down. This isn't funny. But it was now. Everyone knew it. Greg finally stood. "Enough. The board finds no violation. The bees stay." Karen's face twisted like she might combust. "You're all fools," she spat. "If the HOA won't protect this neighborhood, I will." She stormed out. I watched her go, and something about her tone put a chill in my gut. That wasn't frustration. That was decision. That night at 11:30, Diane nudged me awake. "Did you hear that?" Outside, my motion light snapped on. I went to the window. Karen was out there in a dark hoodie, dragging a metal canister. Diane whispered, "Please tell me that isn't pesticide." I finished. Karen knelt near the hive, twisting the cap. I was halfway down the stairs when the first scream ripped through the night. She'd knocked the hive over. Bees poured out like smoke from a fire. The swarm hit her instantly. Her flashlight dropped and spun on the ground, beam whipping across lawns. She ran, flailing, and in the chaos knocked another hive stand. Porch lights exploded on up and down the street. Doors opened. People shouted. By the time I hit the driveway, Karen was sprinting toward her house, arms windmilling, covered in bees. Her husband yanked the door open, and a chunk of the swarm followed her inside. The next 5 minutes sounded like a horror movie filmed in a suburban living room. When the sheriff arrived, the same officer who'd been out before, he looked at me and didn't even bother hiding the smirk. "She trespassed again, didn't she?" "Afraid so," I said, "and vandalized county-registered property." He nodded once. "Well, looks like nature handled the response." Paramedics treated Karen for multiple stings. None were life-threatening, but she looked wrecked. And the story spread like wildfire. HOA president hospitalized after attacking legal beehives. By morning, video from a neighbor's security camera was circulating in the group chat. Karen vanished from public view. Greg resigned a week later, saying, "I'm too old for this circus." The board voted to suspend Karen indefinitely pending investigation. I didn't throw a party. I didn't need to. My hives humming in peace was celebration enough. Over breakfast, Diane said, "So, you didn't have to lift a finger." "Nope," I said. "I just let nature do what the HOA couldn't balance itself." Still, I knew Karen wasn't built to accept defeat. Silence for her wasn't surrender. It was plotting. 3 nights later, at 2:17 a.m., tires crunched gravel outside. I looked through the blinds. A white SUV with HOA magnets idled near my property line. Then the door opened. Karen stepped out. Face still puffy, hair tied back, long gloves up to her elbows. In her hands, a flashlight, a shovel, and another can of bug spray. "Diane," I whispered. "She's back." My wife groaned into the pillow. "Tell me you're not going out there." "I'm making sure she doesn't burn the house down," I said. "Michael," she murmured. "Let karma handle it." I smiled. "That's exactly what I'm doing." I pulled up the camera feed. Karen crept along my fence line, flashlight probing the hive stands. She knelt beside a smaller box, the one I'd moved earlier that week for repairs. What she didn't know was simple. That box was empty. I'd already relocated the active hives across the street at Paul's request. He wanted his apple trees pollinated. I'd left him a loner hive behind his garden fence, safe and secure. So Karen was preparing chemical warfare on a decoy, while the real hive sat 50 feet away, directly in her path. She twisted the spray cap and muttered, "Let's see you buzz now, you little monsters." Then she kicked the decoy box over, and the real hive woke up. Across the street, Paul's motion light snapped on. The bees, disturbed by the sudden brightness, stirred. First a soft ripple, like air before a storm. Then a dark cloud rose from behind Paul's fence, twisting upward, thickening fast. Karen froze as the hum deepened into something you could feel in your teeth. Then they surged. She screamed, dropped the spray and flashlight, and bolted for her SUV, tripping over her own shovel. The swarm chased her in a furious gold halo. Porch lights flicked on up and down the block. Curtains pulled back. Paul stepped outside in a bathrobe with a coffee mug like he'd come to watch fireworks. "Everything okay out there?" Karen tore past him shrieking, "You're trying to kill me." Paul blinked. "At this hour? They're unionized now." Even Diane, watching beside me, couldn't hold it in. "Oh my God," she wheezed. "She's being chased by karma." Literally. Karen dove into her SUV and slammed the door, but a few bees slipped in with her. The vehicle lurched forward and zigzagged down Maplewood Drive, horn blaring, headlights swinging wildly. I called 911. "Hi," I said. "This is Michael Turner on Maplewood. There's been another incident involving our HOA president. Not life-threatening, but you might want someone out here before she plows into a mailbox." 10 minutes later, red and blue lights washed the street. Karen's SUV sat crooked in her driveway, engine still running. The sheriff, the same one, stepped out shaking his head like he couldn't believe this was real life. He saw me and smirked. "Mr. Turner, busy night." "You could say that," I replied. He gestured toward Karen. "She tried for another hive? Looks that way." He chuckled once. "Mind if we pull your camera records?" "Be my guest," I said. Karen sat on the curb while paramedics dabbed at fresh stings on her neck. Dirt streaked her face. Tears had carved lines through it. When she spotted me, she snapped her head up and hissed, "This is your fault. You set me up." I folded my arms. "Karen, you broke onto my property again. The bees just enforced the bylaws for me." The sheriff cleared his throat, hiding a laugh. "Ma'am, you're lucky those were honeybees. They should be destroyed," she screamed. "They're dangerous." "They're not dangerous," he said, writing. "But trespassing with a chemical substance is, well, we'll file a report." The word report hit her like a slap. "You can't do this," she gasped. "I'm the HOA president." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Not after tonight, you're not." He turned to me. "We'll handle it from here, Mr. Turner. Just keep your hives where they are." "Oh, believe me," I said. "They're not going anywhere." When the patrol cars pulled off, Paul wandered over, robe flapping in the breeze. "I think the bees like her perfume," he said. "Maybe they just wanted their queen back," I replied. Paul snorted. "Best entertainment I've had all year." By morning the neighborhood was buzzing, literally and socially. Someone's doorbell cam caught everything. The creeping, the swarm, the screaming, the wild escape. The clip hit the neighborhood Facebook group by noon with a title that said it all. HOA president declares war on bees and loses. Greg resigned officially that afternoon, announcing retirement from all civic duty forever. The board voted unanimously to suspend Karen pending investigation. Within days, the county fined her for trespassing and unauthorized pesticide use. 2 weeks later, her husband put the house up for sale. When the moving truck arrived, I was out front pulling weeds from the lavender. Karen stood by the curb in oversized sunglasses. Stings mostly faded, but the memory still fresh. She hesitated, then muttered, "You think you've won, don't you?" I wiped my hands on my jeans. "No, Karen. I think the neighborhood did." Her lip trembled, but she didn't answer. As the truck pulled away, a bee drifted lazily by and landed on her car window. Karen panicked, swatted at it, and peeled off like she was fleeing a crime scene. After she disappeared, the quiet felt different. Not empty. Free. That evening neighbors gathered near my fence like we were hosting a block party without calling it one. Paul brought beer. Mrs. Jenkins showed up with lemon bars. Even Greg came by wearing an apologetic shrug. We sat in lawn chairs watching sunset light spill across the lavender while the bees floated calmly nearby. Greg shook his head and said, "Never thought I'd say it. But those bees did more for community order than the HOA ever did." I raised my bottle. To teamwork. The laughter that followed felt like the neighborhood exhaling for the first time in months. Later, Diane rested her head on my shoulder as dusk settled in. "You didn't ruin her," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "She did that on her own." I walked to the hive, set my palm gently against the wood, and whispered, "Good job, girls." The hum under my hand was steady and alive, protective without being cruel. Balance restored. The HOA still existed on paper, but people started jokingly calling it the Honey Owners Association. And for the first time since I moved in, folks smiled when they walked past my yard. In the weeks that followed, life in Maplewood Grove stayed calm. Lawns looked greener. Sidewalks sounded quieter. The only buzz anyone cared about came from my hives. Not from gossip, not from clipboards. Officially, the board called Karen's exit a voluntary relocation for health and personal reasons. Unofficially, everyone knew she'd been stung out of town by her own obsession. A young couple eventually bought her old place, too new to remember the reign of pink blazers and citations. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Satisfaction came in small moments. Walking out each morning, checking the hives, and getting friendly waves from neighbors who used to avoid eye contact. Some even asked about starting hives themselves. Funny how fear turns into curiosity once the tyrant leaves. One morning Paul wandered over with his coffee. "You hear about last night's board meeting?" "No," I said. "I was bottling honey." He grinned. "They're dissolving the HOA, turning it into a voluntary neighborhood committee. No fines, no made-up rules, just common sense." I laughed. "So we finally got self-government." "More like be-government," Paul said. "You're basically the mascot now." He wasn't wrong. My honey jars became a neighborhood peace symbol. Every neighbor had one. Someone even made labels that said Hive Justice, made in Maplewood. Somebody else made shirts. It was strange watching a feud turn into a community joke. But under the humor was a real lesson about control, boundaries, and what happens when someone forgets a neighborhood isn't a kingdom. About a month later, Diane answered the door and brought me a small envelope. "You're going to want this." Inside was a handwritten note in unmistakable cursive, Karen's. "Michael, I know you think I got what I deserved. Maybe I did. The doctors said I was lucky. I've had time to think about this place, about you, about the bees. You were right. I wanted control over everything. Maybe because everything else in my life was falling apart. When my husband left, the HOA became the only thing I could run. I know how pathetic that sounds, but it felt like something to hold on to. You don't have to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I sold the house to pay my medical bills. The new owners seem nice. Take care of them the way you take care of your hives. Karen." I stared at the letter for a long time. It wasn't a clean apology, but it was close enough to sound human. Diane touched my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Guess everyone learns eventually. Some people just need more stings than others." That weekend I left a small jar of honey on the old Whitfield porch. No note, no message. Just a golden jar catching sunlight. Maybe Karen would never see it. Maybe the new family would enjoy it without knowing the history inside that sweetness. Either way, it felt like the right ending to that chapter. As summer slipped into fall, the hives flourished. The lavender I'd planted became a rolling sea of purple. Kids from the next street started coming by with their parents, fascinated by the colonies. I showed them how bees communicate, how they dance directions, how every worker has a job, how a hive runs on cooperation instead of control. The irony wasn't subtle. One afternoon, while I was teaching a small group how to approach safely, little Timmy Jenkins asked, "Mr. Mike, Aren't you scared they'll sting you? I smiled under my veil. No, kiddo. They don't sting unless they're scared. They just protect what's theirs. Like any good neighbor should. Timmy thought hard, then said, so the bees are kind of like superheroes? I chuckled. Exactly. Tiny superheroes with wings. That night Diane and I sat on the porch with tea while the sky turned gold. She looked at me over her mug. You know you've become the wise old beekeeper of Maplewood, right? I was aiming for neighborhood menace, I said. But I'll take the upgrade. She laughed. It suits you. The truth is, the whole mess changed me too. I'd spent years chasing quiet, thinking peace meant being left alone. But real peace isn't isolation. Sometimes it's having the backbone to protect your calm when someone tries to poison it. And the universe doesn't always need your fists or your fury to deliver justice. Sometimes it just needs a hive full of honest workers and patience. I glanced at the house across the street. The young couple had hung fairy lights on the porch. Their little girl chased fireflies in the yard, laughing, open and carefree. Diane followed my gaze. You might have saved more than just your bees, she said. I smiled. Maybe. But really, they saved us. Before heading inside, I hung a small wooden sign on the fence. One I'd carved myself. Respect the hive, and it will respect you. As I switched off the porch light, I whispered, half to myself and half to the colony. Sleep well, girls. You earned it. And as that steady hum filled the night air, I realized it wasn't background noise anymore. It was a reminder. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just buzzes until you finally learn to listen. You know, this whole thing started as petty HOA nonsense. Stolen packages, power trips, endless complaints. But it taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. Real power isn't control. It's harmony. The bees showed me that every worker has a role, and none of them try to dominate the hive. They build, they work, they protect, and when you leave them in peace, they turn effort into sweetness. Karen wanted control so badly she forgot what community actually is, and in trying to destroy mine, she triggered something bigger, balance. Karma. Poetic justice. So if you've ever dealt with a Karen, someone trying to dictate your life, your home, your breathing, remember this. Stay calm. Stay steady. Let your hive speak for you. Because eventually, karma always buzzes.